Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, April 13th. Big day for growth. We'll get through all the big movers for the day. Risk disclaimer in front of you: everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice, recommendations. And yeah, it feels like does it kind of, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's Wednesday to me. It seems like we're getting a lot of price action and a lot of decent movers in a quick amount of in a short amount of time. So, big news came out this morning. Some bad news about this J&J vaccine, and it really, in terms of market action, it really lit a fire under all of the growth names and more or less the stay-at-home names. And I don't really have a full answer for this because, I was saying in the TTG pre-market session, I said, we could see all these things starting to move. Of course, besides what was going on with J&J, but Moderna went up and some of the other vaccine makers. But you started to see things like Zoom video go up and Peloton rally pre-market. And my initial thought was, I don't know, it kind of seems like an obvious type thing to see some of these names move up when, I could be downplaying this a little bit. And obviously, this is not, this type of vaccine type information and health stuff is not my area of expertise, but it seems, or at least we hope, that this will just kind of be a blip on the screen. And they're already saying that Moderna can kind of, and Pfizer can pick up the slack a little bit with vaccines, but from what I listen to, it seems like they're being cautious and so forth. When you have an issue, you kind of halt it for a little while to investigate. But I don't know. I mean, does it really? I don't have the. I'm not ashamed to admit I don't have the answers to this. Does it really shake things up a lot? That the fact that they're going to have to halt the administration of the J&J vaccine, or is it just something where the other players and maybe it ends up being a little bit of a delay in terms of the overall schedule to get everyone vaccinated. But you hope for the best, right? I mean, we all kind of want things to go back to normal, and it's unfortunate for the people that had the blood clots and so forth, and you just hope that we can get to where we want to get, in terms of back to normal, right? So in terms of a market aspect, yeah, I mean, this was really the catalyst, I think, for growth. Software names. I mean, really a lot of software names, but just high growth really got going pretty well today. But even like things like of course, internet names, Chinese internet names actually, got to rally a little bit. So I don't know. Would you have seen this type of rally in some of these beaten up areas? We talked about in yesterday's video that clean energy and the Chinese internet names and biotech, has really had some issues as of late. So I don't know. If we didn't get this news today, would we have seen the same type of price reaction? It makes you wonder, right? So regardless of questioning that, let's talk about I didn't really chase a lot of, I wasn't really heavily positioned in in software and in growth. My approach has been, over the last few weeks, is to not really be overweight a ton of different things, not being really overweight value or growth, just to kind of pick good names, and to pick strong names, and be able to have a more diverse approach, and kind of go where the momentum is telling me to go, where the relative strength and where the momentum is telling me to go. So I would have liked to participate a little bit more in some of the in some of the moves in software, because they are a fun bunch to trade. There's no doubt. Things like Coupa Software, Upwork was another one. Twilio, TTD, all those names from, I refer to them a lot of times as 2020 names. So we'll kind of see where this goes. Let me talk about some of the things that I did for the day. But first, we'll go over the actual performance. SPY finished up close to 30 basis points for the day, but this, the star was Nasdaq, up 1.2%. And small caps were kind of an issue all day long. They were down again. The range that the small caps are trading in is kind of crazy. They were down 1.3% at one point for the day. I think that's right, 1.3, maybe 1.2%, and they did come back. But it's just kind of it's a mystery to me, why these things. And here was the version point of control that was taken out and a bounce off of it. But I'm not fully understanding, why they are so weak when other areas of the market are strong, and it seems like they're just testing. Almost, maybe not exactly every day, but a few days of the week, it seems these small caps look like they're going to break down. But you got a nice bounce back off that version point of control, which is right here. But we'll see where these things go. And then if we kind of look through sectors, right? And the other thing that was nice today, which also, may have been a bit of a catalyst to kind of keep the growth rally going for the day, was interest rates. There was a big bond auction today. There was one yesterday too, and I guess the bond auctions are going pretty well because bonds really rallied today. They were up. They finished up 0.75%. I've been on the side of thinking that this falls back down and continues to go in the direction of the prevailing trend, which is down. But I said I would be pleasantly surprised if bonds rally, and I've been rooting for that, or for at least sideways price action. So we're going to be hitting some resistance here at 139, but this is trying to kind of bounce a little bit more than I thought it would, and kind of get out of this little triangle wedge pattern and actually go higher. So these things are a bit interconnected, right, or connected. So I do think that also led to the move that we saw in growth names today. So going through the sectors, right? Interesting that there was a couple things that stood out that weren't exactly growth, like the utilities were up 1.2%. You also had a couple other areas that were mixed in there. Medical devices were very strong today. That could have been helped by DHR, had some good earnings, so they were up 1.9% for the day. And I've been long some Medtronic, which has been a really slow mover. I decided to take this thing off today because it's just a slow mover. But this thing is kind of maybe a little bit bad management by me, because I'm like, hey, I finally got this thing to move. I'm out. So I've been holding this position for a little more than a week, and it's definitely, from a technical standpoint, this is a nice move out of this consolidation. But when you see other things like Tesla, which we'll get to, that's up 7%, and you've been sitting in this trade for a week, and you keep looking at it on your in your account. So I was like, hey, I got a nice mover in this particular one. I'm out. But nevertheless, the group was strong. So I wasn't going to lead off with IHI, the medical device ETF, but yeah, this is nice to see that areas of healthcare, have been performing decently. Even with the J&J news today, the healthcare ETF was up and is grinding in the right direction, up 40 basis points. And then you finally had some biotech wake up a little bit today. Again, didn't really take back too much technical levels here, but at least it bounced a little bit. There was a bit of a call buyer. We'll talk about the ARK funds a little bit. There was a small call buyer today in the ARK genomic ETF, which looks a bit healthier than overall biotech, in my opinion, and had a nice day, up 3.1%. We might as well talk about that because that was a big deal today. It was a lot of those ARK names in the ARK innovation, and we really haven't seen this materialize too much. Sometimes I feel like I'm being overly negative, but the way that this ARK fund has been acting, the ARK innovation, and again, I'm not trying to be negative here, I'm just kind of stating the facts, is that when the market has been going up, this ARK fund underperforms, and when the market has been going down, it gets hit worse than the overall market. So that's usually not what you want to see. That's called relative weakness. But today was a different story. Today, this thing was up 4% today, helped by Tesla and a lot of names. And maybe there was a little bit of short interest covering today because we certainly have seen a lot of put buying in this particular ETF. But here were the performers, and it wasn't even Tesla was the fourth biggest mover in this ETF. Palantir made a big move. I've been joking around about Palantir, how it doesn't move out of the 23, 25 range. I always get asked, hey, can you post a chart of Palantir? And I know what the Palantir chart looks like without even bringing it up, because it just stays in this $23 to $25 range. Now, the positive is here. I told you I'm a little bit negative, or talking in a negative fashion. But really, if this thing pops out of 26, right? I would, and I do switch my opinions once price action kind of confirms it for me. So if I happen to see a move out of value in Palantir, if this damn thing gets above 26, I'll try trading it and aim for 29.90. But sometimes I get a bit sarcastic because I get so many chart requests for Palantir, and this thing has been locked in a $22 to $25 range for now a good couple of months. So I get a little bit of fatigue when I'm asked about the same names over and over. But hey, I've got an alert set, and I'm happy to get involved if this thing starts to break out of the range. Again, my philosophy a lot of times is I don't need to catch the absolute bottom in names, especially when a name is moving in a $2 to $3 range. There's so many other better setups than worrying about the two or trying to get the bottom, when we're talking about $2 or $3. I would be more excited if this thing starts to move above 26 and then maybe up to 30, right? Then you have a little bit more of a range, right, to try to capture. All right, but some of the other names, where did Teladoc finish for the day? I guess it didn't end up over, unless I'm just not seeing it. But Twist, this is another biotech name, Biosciences, was up 9% for the day. That's Palantir. Beam was up decently. Zoom was up 6.6%. Spotify, which I actually like the chart of Spotify. SSYS, which I actually think that this is not a bad looking chart here. If you want to take a stab at something, we talked about this name in the trading room towards the end of the day, but I think this is a pretty simple setup. I like simple setups. So what is the simple setup here? Well, it just got into value. You could see that it's got some support in here. And if it breaks 23, then I would abandon it. But, you could look for some things, off of the 1 hour chart, and notice it just got into value here on the 1 hour chart. But, a couple really near targets would be around 24.80 and then 25.70. That's a little, that's something to do in terms of, a short-term swing. And then you can kind of leave the balance on and see if this can get back above the 50-day moving average. But, again, it's been a really beaten up name, and perhaps it's due for, a bit of a bounce. Roku is up 4.5%. So again, a lot of these ARC names really did well. This is a name I haven't looked at in a while. CRISPR too. Let's see what Zoom. Again, even though after a big day, I still see kind of range bound for Zoom. All right, well let's talk about some other movers, but I did want to make sure that I talked about that because it's been a while since this particular fund has had a really nice day to it. You could see that the FANG stocks, which kind of led a bit. Definitely led last week and a couple days here and there between the beginning of last week, weren't really the factor for the day. Even though they're kind of can be considered stay-at-home names. Amazon was fine, up 60 basis points. I got out of my bullish call spread today, but Facebook, Google, Netflix, none of these names really participated. Apple was a big name today and saw a lot of call buying. They announced, I guess, formally announced their event day, and that ended up being a little bit of a catalyst. I got long Apple yesterday and the dip. That's a name that I've been in and out of over the last week. But here you could kind of see software names. Okta, we saw continuation in cyber names from yesterday that we talked about. But yeah, Okta was up 6%. Team, which announced, so again, like big day for software. They announced guidance, positive guidance after the close today. And a number of other names performed pretty well. But Snap, did I just zero that out by accident? But yeah, there's some performance in some other names. So what did I do today? Here's the blotter. I tell you one name that I'm a little disappointed in. I figured I'm like, okay, this SE might have a nice day, like up 4 or 5%. For whatever reason, it did not participate today. I'm still long this name. I like the little move back into the 50-day moving average, but yeah, this was a head scratcher for me. I actually bought some. I legged into some pre-market, and it just didn't get going for the day. So there's no sell signal, so I left it on, and it is one of my favorite names, and maybe it just wasn't the particular day for that name. But really, what the story of the day I thought was Tesla, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting 15 minutes into the video to talk about Tesla, but this was something that I had been really stalking this name for the last couple days. I traded it for a day trade yesterday because it didn't break value, which was right around the 710 level, which you've heard me talk about an awful lot, right? And that's the system that we use is the MarketWebs has really given us some great clues along the way about this particular name. So, first off, once this thing started to decline, it tried to rally back here. It tried to battle here back at the 720 level. It couldn't do it. 720 was the bottom of value for last month. It tried here again. It failed. It tried here again. It failed. And it just spent some time. And it is quite normal. We talked a lot about NVIDIA yesterday, that when a name has a big move, sometimes it just takes time, right? For a name that has made a big run, sometimes the digestion of the gains can really take a long time, and I think that's what we've kind of got to in the last couple months. But the top of value for this is right around the 710 level. Again, we talked about this in yesterday's video. It stopped here. Right, and that's why my trade yesterday was just a day trade, because we saw this barrier a couple times, but once you could see what it was doing pre-market, it just looked like, hey, the trigger for me was 710, and I bought a little bit of calls right off the start, and then what I like to do sometimes, because sometimes we see names start to go in the beginning of the day and they just don't finish strong. Apps is one example of that, which I was long coming into the day, but it started to get going and it stalled, right? Still finished basically flat for the day, but we really never know if a name is going to do something like this. We can watch the volume, we could watch the call action as well, but it's still not guaranteed. So what I did was, I made some money real quick, in next week's calls, and hindsight 2020, I wish I would have just stayed in the option position. But what I like to do, because I didn't think that the name was done for the day, I just wanted to make sure, because the options moved so fast, that I captured some profits, and then I legged into a stock position, and I held that stock position throughout the day, and I took my gains at the end of the day. Now, what I'm looking for Tesla for tomorrow is I might be a little bit too anxious to grab those gains, because this thing could just keep going for tomorrow. I don't see resistance until we get up to about 787. That would be the next area. So one of the things that we've, because I've talked about Tesla now in these videos probably about 3 or 4 times over the last week. What I noted last week was this had a personality change, right? And a lot of times you could find this on the 1 hour chart, right, where you start to see the personality of a name change, right? And we talked about basically since back in January was the last time that this thing was above a value area, right? So these value areas on the 1 hour chart are for a week time period, right? So here we were back in January, right? And once we got into the beginning of February, this thing stopped rallying, right? And then it started to, here was a one more failure here, and then it just started to slide, and it just behaved, you know, it it behaved very systematically in terms of it could not, once it stopped kind of, breaking down, every time it rallied, it would not be able to get out of its value area for the week. So here is one example. Here again, the following week it tried again. It couldn't do it. It made a little bit of a lower high here. The value area was a little bit slimmer for the next week. It failed here. Then we get to the next week. It tried again and it failed. So finally, last week, here was the personality change. Was it did get over a value area, which again had not happened since January. Then the other thing that I'm not sure if we talked about this in yesterday's video. I did post a chart to talk about it, but notice when the value area gets very slim like this, it's almost the equivalent of, I know a lot of people know that are familiar with the term coiled, when the moving averages kind of coil around one another. The value areas can also signal something like that too, that a big move is coming. When the value areas get very narrow, right? Take a look at the past, the width of these value areas. The last one that was really narrow was back here, and we did get a big move, right? Once this thing broke, it just broke really quickly to the downside. So take note of that. It's not always, that it happens. It's, nothing's 100%, but usually when these value areas get very tight like this, where the width is very small, usually a big move is coming. So this went the right way. I actually was talking about this name in a podcast last night, which will come out on Friday. I don't want to ruin who I did the podcast with, but we're actually talking about this, and I said, hey, this is a name that I'm going to be watching for tomorrow. So this worked really well. Congratulations. I know a lot of traders played this via just options all day long, and playing with short-term options, taking profits, and then rolling out to the next strike. So that's another way that you could trade it, and you can make more money than I did today. But listen, I'm happy to do playing my game, and by trading stock, it allows me to focus on other things. I do manage a trading room all day long, so when I'm in stock, I can just keep that trailing stop. I can keep moving that trailing stop up and stay in the stock, and not have to watch it very closely when I've got other things on my plate. So this worked great. Congratulations. I got out of my Amazon call spread for 850. It's the difference of waiting a couple more days to get the full $1.50. But I put this on last week for 385. Got out of it for 850. I bailed on a couple trades that weren't working early. I want to talk about market breadth in a second, but I put on a trade in Marvell. It wasn't working. There's other things on the tape that were working. So rather than distract myself with stressing over something that's not working on a new trade, I just I cut it, and I got into it. So here's the advantage of doing that, right? Rather than having to say, like, do I add to this position? It's down. Maybe it comes back. I can focus my attention on other things like roadblocks, right? So this was a trade that I put on, and I wanted my attention here. I thought this name could run. I've been stalking an entry in this name to the last couple days. This was a chart that I posted in the room yesterday saying, again, even though this is a newer name, it still has a value area, and it tried on this day a couple days ago, and I don't want to say failed, but it just couldn't make it over value for, which was right around $74. And then yesterday it did close, so it gave me the trigger yesterday above 73, or excuse me, 74. And then I'm like, hey, the market's got momentum to it today. We started to see some call buying in it, and I jumped on it, and this was a really nice trade as well. I got in this at 76, so pretty early in the day, 76.39. On the break of the 5-minute value area. So I look at those there. Look at that, by the way, that takeout of the version point of control. And basically, I just rode this thing all day long after taking a couple targets. And this one, I remained long after taking a few targets in it. So, $81. If they come so easy to you, I do, take a gift, right? If I get into a trade and in a few hours it rallies like crazy, I'm going to take the gift, right? And put it in my pocket and be happy. Now I left a portion on so that if it wants to continue to trend, I'm there with it. But yeah, so that's it. A couple other trades. I talk about the losers and the winners, like I did with Marvell. But I tried. There was some call buying in Mara, but it just for whatever reason this wasn't the one to go today. MSTR had a phenomenal day today, up 18%. Usually these things move as a group. When one moves, the other moves. But this thing had a phenomenal day. Mara's been my name within the sector as well as SI, but neither one of these things really did much today. So I tried, a trade, and sometimes that's all you can do. I mentioned it was kind of a preemptive trade. I didn't have a signal on it. But it just didn't work for the day. And I didn't want to, this is a volatile name. I don't need to hold on to that. So my overall thought is, right, because the video is already 25 minutes long, I have a problem with what, now market breadth did improve for the day, but I went over, and if anybody wants this video, but I gave about a 7-8 minute video on what market breadth really means to me. And how I can use that to make adjustments in my trading plan. And just as I use the analogy of a pilot, a lot of times people use the analogy of a trader, kind of a little bit similar to a pilot, right? A pilot always has to make adjustments, right? If the weather is stormy, if there's high winds, if you're flying at night, right? The pilot has to make adjustments. As traders, we need to do the same, in my opinion, right? We need to do the same thing. When we're getting a little bit of a different environment, when the wind is not at your back, in terms of more things advancing than declining, you have to make adjustments. So I talked about that to members earlier today. If anyone really wants that video, they can email me. But these are the things that we do for members. But that's my, I like to kind of, if we look at something a lot in the trading room and talk about market breadth, or if we talk about sentiment, you have to translate it into how are you going to use that to trading, or are you just talking about it just to talk about an indicator? For me, I when I talk about these things, I actually take action, right? And for me, the bottom line is if we're not seeing market breadth and it's acting as a little bit of a divergence, to the price action, I take some trades off, right? And I don't, there's a couple of trades that I tried at the end of the day. I did not keep them on because when we're seeing so many names decline versus advance, I don't need to be accumulating positions right now, and I want to actually take some positions off, right? And I have more details about the reasoning behind that. But so yeah, that's the plan. And the bottom line with bad market breadth is it doesn't mean that you can't make money. It just means that it gets to be a little bit harder when you have more declining names than advancing names. So I take action, I make adjustments, and we go from there because we're still finding a really good quantity of setups like the Tesla, and I didn't even talk about Nvidia today, but I didn't take any targets in my trade today. So this one I'm kind of letting run a little bit, up another 3%. And I mentioned I think in yesterday's video that I bought this thing after it had moved. So again, there's always the assumption, I think, by some traders that if they don't get in at the perfect place, they're like, oh, I missed it. Oh, geez, if I would have only gotten this Nvidia, right when the news story hit. But look at it, right? I mean, I purchased this thing somewhere in here yesterday, and that was around. Here, I'll give you the exact thing. But too many times traders think that they miss it because they didn't get it perfectly. I'll tell you, you're not always going to get things perfectly, right? So I was definitely late on this. Where's my entry? Right, this was yesterday. Yes, this was way late. Yeah, this was all the way up here. Sorry, I didn't buy it here. I bought it. I had to make a decision. Did I think it was going to go up more? So yeah, I had to purchase it at 610. That is extremely late, right? I missed the whole thing, you know. But I thought you have to think about where it's going to go from there. You can't think, oh, geez, I missed a 5-6% move, right? Where is it going to go from here? Because look, it's up to 626, right? So if you had that premise yesterday where you're like, oh, geez, I missed Nvidia. I couldn't get the perfect entry. You really have to think about where it's going to get to, right? So if we look at so where do I think this thing's going to get to? I'm hoping that this thing can continue to go higher, and 682 would be would be really nice. But if not, I'm looking at 633, right? So I held out taking a target today. I did take one. Didn't I take one yesterday? Am I thinking of a different name? Maybe I took a target this morning in it. I feel like I did take a target in this thing. But anyway, a lot of names. But yeah, I am looking for this thing to get up to 633, 634, take a target, and then kind of see if this thing wants to stay out of, out of the range. Right. And that's when things really get exciting, to me, is when things have been in a range for a long time and they get out of a range. Sometimes they can get what I called yesterday on Twitter as a lot of fun. So, all right, video longer than normal. I apologize. 30 minutes, but a lot to talk about today. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.